You know, James, I was thinking while I was watching Maestro, one of the questions that you hear sometimes within movie lover circles is where are the movie stars today? Is Tom Cruise the last movie star? Somebody that can open a film with his name that kind of is left over or kind of a legacy from the golden age of Hollywood. Like who is the name that's a bigger than the role that they're in, that they're not just playing a Marvel superhero and they've
Mm.
become popular because of that, but they're genuine movie stars. And watching this, I'm like, oh no, it hasn't ended with Tom Cruise. Bradley Cooper, I could say after watching Maestro, is becoming, if he hasn't already attained that status of movie star. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been really impressed with him and his choices. Certainly as he was kind of coming up, I wasn't that bothered by him, really.
Yeah.
And I know even these days, some people like to give him a bit of stick. It's the same thing that they used to say about DiCaprio. It was like he's trying too hard. He clearly
Hmm.
really wants to win an Oscar. And I think that's a bit harsh. I think that since he's decided to start directing movies, he's made some really interesting choices. Both of his
Yeah.
movies now are essentially sort of musicals to one degree or another.
Yeah.
They're about musicians, they're about artists, but not the art form in which he is involved. I thought Star is Born was great actually, and I thought that it was going to do better than it did come award season. But I was really impressed above anything else. I was really impressed with Cooper's direction, and it's fantastic to see that he has really pushed
Yeah.
himself even further. And
Yeah.
the film that Maestro reminded me of from this year was Oppenheimer, actually.
Oh, okay.
I found that there's a kind of similar approach to the biopic,
Hmm.
and I think it goes beyond merely sort of the use of different aspect ratios and different color, color and black and white
Black and
footage and
white.
different
Yeah.
stocks and all the rest of it, telling the story out of continuity, and also telling the story essentially of a fairly unlikable protagonist. I think both Bernstein and Oppenheimer were incredibly flawed individuals who
Yeah.
had greatness thrust upon them, if you like, and
Hmm.
are appreciated more for what they accomplished, or respected in certain circles for what they accomplished, more than as a human being.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I think was really interesting about this movie is the focus he put on Carey Mulligan's character,
Hmm. Yes.
Bernstein's wife. And I've always been a big fan of Carey Mulligan, and I thought in this she was absolutely, as brilliant as she is
Yes.
always. And I thought it was a very honourable choice that he made to actually give her top billing as opposed to
Hmm.
himself.
I agree with everything you said. One of the things that I struck me while I was watching it was the parallels between himself and in Bohemian Rhapsody, the life of Freddie Mercury, in that they're both musical geniuses, like absolute musical geniuses, who never wanted to be alone. Like that was the thing. In fact, some of their sexual escapades came from whatever their childhood trauma, history, whatever,
Mm.
that they needed to have other people around them. And they had an almost over the top love for people, but with all those little flaws and all the little creative tensions that creative genius tends to produce in people. And both of them had women in their lives, despite their homosexual tendencies, that they stuck by through thick and thin. Freddie Mercury had
Yeah.
Mary, although he never married her. To his last days, she was by his side. In fact, I think he left pretty much everything to her. And Leonard Bernstein with his wife, despite his peccadillos, he would always stay with her. Then nothing was going to separate them. I thought what this movie was missing was once Carey Mulligan dies, it kind of just there's no crescendo to Bernstein's life. There's no live aid like we saw in Bohemian Rhapsody that you can kind of just tie the bow and say, oh, that was wonderful. His wife dies. He seems to, and this is where the film kind of sputters.
Mm.
He just falls into a life of teaching and partying, and then he dies. And thus endeth Leonard Bernstein. But the film is just so I watching Bradley's performance of Bernstein was wonderful. It was brilliant. I To me, I would be surprised if he doesn't win the Academy Award for this.
He will certainly be up there and in the running. I think his performance is fantastic. I think the direction is incredible. I think,
Yeah.
but I think that will go elsewhere. But yeah, I think he's definitely in the running for best actor
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
sure.
I don't think they're ready to give him a directing Oscar yet. That will come in the future.
I mean,
But
that's interesting because in a way, I thought he was gonna get it for A Star Is Born because actually, if you look back, the Oscars love giving, a seasoned actor who turns to directing
mhm.
an Oscar for directing straight off the bat. Redford got one, Mel
Mel
Gibson
Gibson,
got one,
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood, Kevin Costner.
Hmm.
There's a
Yeah,
long run of it actually, and I was kind of
yeah.
like, oh, they might do the same thing, and then that year they went in a completely different direction. It's interesting. Two of the things you just said. I think in both cases, actually, with Freddie Mercury and Bernstein, it's not that they stuck with the women; it's that the women stuck with them.
But yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I think,
But
and I think
there was a loyalty that went the other way too. There was a loyalty that went the other way.
sure, sure, but I think where one must give credit is to the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
women for
yeah.
sticking by their men through all of it. And I think it is interesting how certainly Bernstein's kind of life doesn't build to some crescendo. I feel that he kind of thrived off the drama, if you like,
Hmm.
off the dramatic of being in a sort of relationship where he was philandering, if you
Yeah.
like, and the fact that it was also certainly slightly surreptitious, and
Mhm.
when there's no longer any sort of drama, then it's not building to a big climax because he's free to do whatever he wants, and
Yeah.
he doesn't want that. He
No,
never
no.
wanted that. So I wonder if there's an element of that. I mean, I do think his performance is fantastic. A lot of has been said about the nose, that
Hmm.
he chose to wear a fairly pronounced prosthetic proboscis, and
Hmm.
and whether that was wise or not. And I think it totally worked. I mean, Bernstein
Yeah.
was nose was known for having a big
Yeah.
nose.
Yeah.
But I think it helped him disappear into the role. After minutes, I genuinely forgot I was watching Bradley Cooper.
I thought the makeup, and he likely will get an Oscar nom for the makeup
Oh yeah.
because they so captured. I totally agree. After 15 minutes of this film, I was not watching Bradley Cooper anymore. I was watching Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah, I believe the makeup artist is Kazuhiro, who did Bombshell, who did Darkest Hour,
Mhm.
won an Oscar for that. I think for both actually. I think he worked with Akira Kurosawa even. So and he did the what's it called? The Benjamin Button Curious Case of Benjamin Button makeup there as well. So he is arguably the best in the business. I think it would be remiss to bet against him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought the film was fabulous. I would have loved to have seen it on the big screen, certainly with a big sound system,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there are some really sort of
That
fantastic.
there's that musical number at about two-thirds of the way in where he's conducting, and
Sure, yeah.
it gave me goosebumps. I mean, it was just, and Cooper's just, and I'm thinking, wow, this is brilliant. This is great filmmaking. And normally you wouldn't have a musical sequence that long, and yet watching him conduct it, I'm sure there must have been people saying, we should edit this down, and he's like, no, 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 this all stays.